This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. I'm Cesar Delgado. We've been talking about the E15 and RVO for the last couple weeks ago. Well, he's joining me now is Geoff Cooper from the RFA, and he is the president of the Renewable Energy Association. I've been talking about the 45Z guidance for the last couple months. But we will talk about the policy in Washington side. We were talking to Paul Winters from Clean Fuels Alliance. This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. We've been talking about the E15 and RVO for the last couple weeks ago. Well, he's joining me now is Geoff Cooper from the RFA, and he is the president of the Renewable Energy Association. Hi, Geoff. How are you?
I'm very good this morning, Caesar. Thanks for having me.
Geoff, I talked about the biofuel in Congress on the ethanol policy in Washington, D.C. What is your thoughts on this situation?
Well, we are anxiously awaiting some signals from Congress on the status of legislation that they are working on that would finally allow retail gas stations to sell E15 all year long nationwide. That has been a high priority for our association and for the industry for several years. We've come close to getting that legislation across the finish line. We came close again at the end of January this year, but didn't quite get there. But as a result of the process at the end of January during the appropriations process, we now have a group of roughly 20 House Republicans that are working on legislation that would finally allow year-round E15, and we expect that legislation to be introduced in the weeks ahead. And we remain very hopeful that that legislation can pass the House and then move to the Senate, pass out of the Senate, and get to the president's desk for signature as soon as possible. And we know President Trump has called on Congress to get that legislation to him as quickly as possible. And there's even more urgency to get this done now, given the situation in the Middle East and Operation Epic Fury and the impact that that has had on fuel prices for American consumers. If we get year-round E15 legislation done, that is going to provide lower cost fuel to consumers across the country at a time when every American is looking for some relief on their energy bill.
Oh boy, it is pretty tricky for E15 in Washington. What tell our lawmakers on this legislation, Geoff?
Well, what we are telling lawmakers, Caesar, is really a very simple message. And the message is the time has come. In fact, it's past time to get this legislation approved. And so, whatever it takes, this is the time to get that bill across the finish line, get it to President Trump's desk for signature. We can't afford to wait any longer. This is incredibly urgent, not just for helping to reduce fuel prices for consumers, but also for helping the farm economy, which we know is really struggling right now. And allowing year-round E15 would open a new market opportunity for farmers at a time when they desperately need new sources of demand and new markets to help boost profitability and get agriculture back in a better position to succeed.
Yes. We saw these prices for right now, but farmers need some help.
They really do. I think when we talk to farmers, the outlook is pretty bleak in farm country. They're looking at the third or fourth year in a row of negative returns, negative margins. And now, again, as a result of the war in the Middle East, we're seeing input costs increase even further. They were already at record levels. And so farmers are very nervous, very anxious, very concerned about what's happening in the farm economy. And without new sources of demand and new ways of boosting value for the commodities they're producing, things are only going to get worse. So, again, that's another reason, a very important reason for Congress to move as quickly as possible on year-round E15 and get that done to really help provide some hope and some optimism to farmers who are facing really the worst economic conditions that they've seen in close to 50 years. The state of the ag economy is in really poor shape, and things are almost as bad as they were in the early and mid 1980s when farmers had a historic farm crisis. We're on our way to that sort of situation again unless Congress and the administration can intervene here with some very simple policy solutions to help boost demand and value for America's farmers.
Like the Farm Bill.
Yes, absolutely. We know that farmers are again anxiously awaiting some action from Congress on a farm bill. It's been way too long since Congress has passed a comprehensive farm bill. Agriculture is looking for answers, looking for certainty. They need to know what farm policy is going to look like in the years ahead. And we have seen some movement on the farm bill. The House Agriculture Committee um, is moving a farm bill. And again, it's long overdue. Unfortunately, that farm bill does not include year-round E15, but we do believe there will be opportunities in the Senate when the Senate Agriculture Committee takes up farm bill discussions to put the year-round E15 issue back on the table.
We had a several discussion on RVO and the 45Z guidance for the substantial aviation fuels. How do you describe the feeling of being able to use consumption in the airliners and demand for gasoline?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's certainly an opportunity that we are very focused on at RFA. We know that in the short term, year-round E15 is an immediate solution that can help boost demand for both ethanol and the feedstocks that we use to make ethanol, namely corn and sorghum. But longer term, we are going to need bigger opportunities, longer term opportunities to continue expanding the marketplace for renewable fuels like ethanol. And aviation is one of those major opportunities. We're seeing a little bit of progress in terms of using ethanol to make aviation fuel. There is a facility in Georgia. It's the first in the world that is taking ethanol and making it into sustainable aviation fuel. But we need to see that opportunity further develop. And there's still a lot of work to do to really get sustainable aviation fuels off the ground. 45Z is an important first step to helping drive investment and technology adoption in sustainable aviation fuels, but there is more work to do and certainly more tax policy work to do to ensure that the conditions are ripe for growing our use of ethanol in aviation. So that is a longer term opportunity. It's something we're very focused on, and it's an enormous opportunity. Globally, the aviation sector uses around 80 or 90 billion gallons of jet fuel every year. And if US ethanol could get even a small fraction of that marketplace and break into that sector, it would be incredibly impactful for not just the ethanol industry, but the entire agriculture sector, and it would also be extremely beneficial to consumers, people who travel, on jet planes. It's lower. It would be a lower emissions fuel, and we believe over the long term it would be a more cost competitive, lower cost fuel. We know ethanol is the lowest cost fuel available on the global marketplace today. And with continued innovation and technology adoption, we think jet fuel made from ethanol can be extremely competitive with current jet fuel, which today is made primarily from petroleum.
Geoff, what is your thoughts on RVO for the beans markets?
Yes, that's another issue where we are waiting for answers from the federal government. The final RVO rule for 2026 and 2027 is currently being reviewed by the White House. We expect that it will be published and released soon, hopefully in the next week or two. And again, that's a very important piece of certainty and clarity that the marketplace needs. We need to know, and it's not just us in the ethanol industry, it's the entire supply chain, oil refineries, uh, fuel marketers and retailers. We all need to know what is going to be required in terms of renewable fuels in 2026 and 2027. So waiting on those renewable volume obligations and hoping that they will send a positive signal to the industry that that helps stimulate more growth and more development and more investment in our sector.
What do you recommend within the E15 year-around? It is your final thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts on E15 and what we are recommending is that Congress gets the job done. It is past time for year-round E15. If we already had year-round E15 available, we wouldn't be seeing the extremely high prices we're seeing at the pump today. It is time for Congress to finish the job, get the legislation done, get it to President Trump for signature, and let the marketplace react. We know that when that signal is out there, farmers are going to do what farmers do a great job of in this country, which is producing the feedstock, supplying our industry with feedstock. And we know our industry is ready to respond as well by producing more ethanol. And we know that blending more ethanol into gasoline here in the U.S. is going to put uh, downward pressure on prices, and it's going to reduce prices at the pump for consumers. So, our top priority and recommendation number one is to get that E15 legislation passed immediately.
Thanks, Biff, and let's go Cubs. The Cardinals are looking good in Florida from spring training.
Yes, they are, and it's been encouraging to see the Cardinals are off to a good start in spring training. I am certainly hoping that continues in the regular season. It would be good to see our Redbirds back at the top of the National League Central standings this year. It's been a rough couple of years, so we're excited to see them playing some good baseball this spring.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat? but the Cubs are looking good.
Oh, I was talking about the Cardinals. I'm not too worried about the Cubs.
Thanks again.
Well, thanks for having me this morning, Caesar, and appreciate the attention that you're giving to these issues for us. Thank you.
This is Geoff Cooper from the RFA on Back Roads of Illinois. I've been talking about the 45Z guidance for the last couple months, but we will talk about the policy in Washington side. We were talking to Paul Winters from Clean Fuels Alliance. Hey, Paul, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Caesar. Thank you for having me on the show today, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about the 45Z guidance.
Paul, let's talk about the fundamentals on the 45Z guidance for our farmers. Could we talk about this?
Yes, absolutely. We've been waiting for this guidance for a long, long time. The tax credit came into existence on January 1st, 2025. We had been urging the U.S. Treasury to provide guidance as early as 2024 to give our producer members and farmers a way to transition from prior tax credits to this new one. Unfortunately, that guidance didn't emerge until the middle of January 2025. And then there were so many questions about that guidance. It really shook the industry up considerably. So we're glad now that in February there is an actual proposed rule. It is effective and usable. There is a clause in the proposed rule that allows taxpayers to rely on the proposal until there are final rules. And Treasury really took a lot of care in listening to input from industry on the initial guidance, and they were very, very responsive to the concerns from industry. So the tax credit structure is intended to provide more incentive to fuels that have a lower carbon intensity compared to baseline petroleum fuels. And that carbon intensity is measured on a farm to fuel basis. So it takes into account the practices that farmers use when they grow the crops that are used for fuel, and then it follows that all the way through production and delivery to the fuel customer. So there are still some pieces of that guidance that we're waiting on that will take a deeper dive into the credit that farmers deserve. There were changes to the 45Z credit program made by Congress last July that we're still waiting to see put into effect. And that's going to that's going to require the Department of Energy's Argonne National Labs to release an update to its carbon intensity model. And that model is generally known as the GREET model. It's a greenhouse gas and regulated emissions um, for energy technologies model.
What is your thoughts on regenerative agriculture and demand for E15 year-round, which is playing out for right now in Congress?
Yeah, so that's part of the regenerative ag is part of the credit that would go to farmers and needs to be included in the Argonne National Lab GREET model. Um, Farmers engage in a number of practices already that, such as reduced fertilizer demand, uh, reduced tillage and other practices that reduce the need for tractors and other vehicles to make passes across the farmland. So all of those practices help farmers store more carbon in their soil. And that overall is a benefit to the environment. It's a benefit to the farmers. It increases their own productivity. And it's traditionally counted in the life cycle modeling. So including that regenerative ag component in the GREET model would directly quantify the benefit that is being contributed by farmers to the biofuel production process. The USDA has been working on this model, this regenerative ag model, for a number of years. We hope they are ready to complete it soon, but it's going to be a multi-step process for USDA to get that model incorporated into Treasury's tax program. So USDA needs to finalize its modeling. Then the Department of Energy's Argonne National Lab needs to incorporate the modeling into the overall GREET model. And lastly, Treasury needs to give taxpayers permission to utilize the new model to calculate their tax benefits. That's a long process, and we hope there aren't continued delays. And in terms of E15, this is a long desired goal of the ethanol industry. They are making a solid case that they've waited far too long for the permission from Congress to enable year-round E15 sales. It would be a direct benefit to farmers. It's a direct benefit to consumers because they get a lower cost fuel at the pump. For the biodiesel, renewable diesel industry, it also provides an additional feedstock for our production. The distiller's corn oil that results from ethanol production is a value-added feedstock for biodiesel and renewable diesel. So we hope there are additional supplies of this distiller's corn oil from increased production of ethanol. In terms of the policy, there are a lot of trade-offs being discussed by Congress to get agreement on approving E15. We don't support any of those trade-offs. We do believe there should be constraints on the small refinery exemptions under the renewable fuel standard. but we believe the ethanol industry be should get approval for year-round E15 separately from any other negotiations. So in terms of the legislation that's being proposed, we are sort of neutral on that.
Of course, some farmers are finding some markets for their grains in the country for home use.
Yeah. So we know that the South American countries are sort of maximizing their production of ethanol from sugarcane. They're also beginning to rotate sugar production with corn production, and again, corn and using the corn to increase their ethanol production. South American countries are also increasing production of soy and competing with U.S. soy growers for markets in China and elsewhere. So there is a substantial supply of all of the grains, and South American countries are increasing their own goals for using ethanol and biodiesel within their own economies as a way to provide added value to those crops. It primarily is focused on their policies are primarily focused on their own growing needs for fuel.
What happened to cooking oil from China?
So so China implemented a program to increase collection of used cooking oil because before this, some of the Chinese restaurants were using that cooking oil, reusing it in the food supply. That's a health hazard. So the problem arose when China began to incentivize exports of used cooking oil, and that undercut the value of other oils in the marketplace. China has stopped that incentive, and the U.S. U.S. EPA has implemented some policies that require U.S. producers to track the source of used cooking oil all the way back to the restaurant that it came from. The 45Z tax credit does not allow U.S. producers to get a tax credit based on imported used cooking oil. So we believe that's a problem that has been effectively addressed.
Do you have any final thoughts about the RVO situation?
So the renewable fuel standard for 2026 should have been finalized in November of 2024. It's a significant disruption to the market to start the year 2026 without a rule in place. Clean Fuels has actually been pursuing a lawsuit against EPA for the delay in publicizing the rule. But it is finally in the last stages of review. It should be released by the end of the month, according to EPA. In our court case, they have actually promised that it will be public before the end of this month. And we're still keeping our legal case open in order to ensure they meet that promise. Our
Thanks,
industry.
Paul.
Well, thank you, Caesar.
Thanks, Paul. I do really appreciate it. This is Paul Winters from Clean Fuels Alliance on Back Roads of Illinois.